I'm joined by Mirko Guaralda, who is the co-founder of the Journal of Public Space. And Mirko, we talked to your colleague Luisa Bravo previously. She visited us in Stockholm for a couple of days, and we had some very positive ideas for collaboration. But I'd like to know more about your involvement in the journal and the founding of the journal, the history, and what you hope to accomplish.
Okay, well, I met Luisa the first time in 2012, and she then came to visit me in Australia in 2013, and we started discussing possible joint projects. Then in 2014 we had the first Past, Present and Future of Public Space conference. And at the end of the conference then, when we were discussing what to do with all the proceedings and all the discussion that we had during the sessions, we noticed that there was a gap in the publishing world of an avenue to discuss and publish about public space. So we investigated possible alternatives like creating a book or having a more standard set of proceedings. And then we started discussing the idea of maybe we should start our own journal. As you know, Luisa had already experience in being the journal manager of two journals while she was at the University of Bologna. And so once we decided to explore the possibility, initially Luisa was thinking to have the journal in Italy because she is familiar with that publishing world. But after speaking with my university, the Queensland University of Technology, they understood the importance of having a journal dedicated to public space, so they were happy to support the project, and they provided us with the platform and all the IT necessary to get started with the journal. So while the journal was started initially just to distribute knowledge that it was already produced during this conference, the mission of the journal is to educate people about public space and to be a sort of virtual public space where people meet, share and discuss their interest. So for this reason we decided the journal was not a disciplinary journal. Many of us are designers, and at this stage we got a lot of contribution from designers because that's the easiest thing to associate with public space. But we welcome contribution from different kind of disciplines. So far we had also people working in media and communication or in interaction design contributing to the journal. And we had also a medical doctor who spent time in the Caribbean, and he was really happy to contribute his experience about manhood and masculinity in public space in the Caribbean. So we had a public health paper. We also are open to non-academics. So the journal is structured with two sections. The first section is the academic one, which is double-blind peer-reviewed. And the second section is for practitioners, artists, advocates, or even educators. That's because we understand that, yes, in academia we do a lot of interest work, but there's also a lot of interest work done in the profession, done by NGOs and artists and activists. And we understand that for this kind of people it might be challenging publishing in an academic journal. So that's why we decide to have the two components, the more academic ones where we present projects and researches, and the one which is more informal, open to the broader community. This is also to present the journal, if you want, to both worlds. We don't want to just be perceived as an academic journal, and so people from industry don't read it and consult it. And we don't want just to be perceived as an industry journal, and so academics don't contribute it. The idea is to share, and hopefully things can percolate from one world to the other world.
So that seems like such a critical issue to me, how to connect the research side, the academic side, to the practice, and it seems to be such a gap right now, don't you think?
Yeah, that's indeed, in the sense that I think that depends how the two different worlds, academia and industry, work. We know that in academia things happen quite slowly, while in industry you need to do things really, really quickly. And in my experience as a researcher, often when we speak with industry partner, there's this need to say, I need this tomorrow. And it's really hard for an academic to say, I can do the research by tomorrow, because we got procedures, but also we got procedures to implement for the quality of our research. So the aim of the journal is to try to create this link so that people from industry can have a platform where they can go and find resources for their work in industry, and people from academia can also present their work in a slightly different context, in the sense that we are really open to all kinds of experiences about public spaces. And what we notice is that sometimes academics contact us, but they are not interested in writing an academic paper, they are interested in writing a viewpoint, so that they can be more free, they can still infuse their writing with academic references and references to their academic work, but is a more informal piece of writing, mainly aimed to people from industry, that they can understand how the research done can be implemented in practice.
The other thing that seems very important about what you're doing is to gather up the knowledge about public space and to really bring it to one place, because right now there are many different fields, as you well know, environmental psychology and sociology and all these different fields that talk about aspects of public space, but no sort of one place to gather the research and talk about it. And it seems to me that's something that you're really leading the way on.
Yeah, well, look, as a researcher, I'm aware that disciplines are artificial, in the sense that we are really good as human beings in classifying and dividing, but what we do is that we just look at one aspect. And in my work, I noticed that when you inquire and you're passionate about public space, you cannot only look at one thing. And I've seen many projects where the aesthetics was perfect, but then the social aspect was not. So as a researcher, as an practitioner, for me it's really important to speak with different people and bring together different disciplines, because public spaces are really fragile, and if we get them wrong, it's really expensive and painful to fix them. So that's why we think that we need to speak to different people for different contexts, from academia and from industry. So the decision to have a journal which is not linked to a discipline can be challenging at first, because clearly when you work in your own discipline, you've got your own network and you can rely on your peers to do your peer review. We have to say that when we started the journal, we already looked for people in other disciplines, so that when we got a paper that is not in a disciplines where we are familiar, we got the resources to ask these people to review the papers and to fix them. And then as a policy, we try to reach out, in the sense that many journals always look for peer reviewers. We ask to support the journal, not only reviewing the papers, we understand that we are all busy, but also referring other people. Because we get a lot of spam about collaborating with journals. We want to keep the journal more personal, and so sometimes we contact people out of the blue, but more often we go on a referral basis. And that's because we want to build a community around the journal, and this community should be across different professions and different disciplines, because that's what is public space. It's not just design or just sociology, is fluid, and different people have to contribute to it.
It also seems that one of the great benefits of public space is that it is such a cross-disciplinary subject area, and something that people think they know about, although sometimes they bring their own preconceptions and they think that public space is just parks or just one thing or another. And part of the challenge, I guess, is to get people to think about public space as a more general kind of joined up system in the city. So I guess you could say the great advantage of public space is that it's such a systemic phenomenon, but the great disadvantage of public space is that it's such a systemic phenomenon. Yeah. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, we are here at the World Urban Forum, and I think that speaking with people and sharing the journal and my experience as a researcher, the thing that I found really interesting is that a lot of people ask me, what do I mean when I say public space? Right. And as you were saying, people are familiar with parks, especially in the Anglo-Saxon world. When you speak about public space, people immediately think of parks and gardens. And I live and work in Australia, and that's generally when you do public space planning, you'll do parks planning. So explaining that public space is more a social space than a specific typology is something that I found myself doing a lot during this conference. And this is the approach that we take in the journal, saying that for us a public space is mainly a place where people can connect and socialize. So yes, we can have parks, gardens and squares and streets, but a public space can also be a museum or an art gallery, a library, even a hospital. Even the foyer or hotel can be a public space. So this is part of the mission of the journal, to educate community about public spaces, but also the research community in not having this fixed distinction between who works on the interior, who works on the exteriors. Everything is fluid, and a public space nowadays can be something that we've not experienced in the past. We are also open to discuss virtual public spaces, in the sense that nowadays part of our life happen online, and those are also different type of public spaces. And what is interesting is the overlapping that we can have between the online world and the physical world. I remember that 10 years ago people were saying that public spaces were going to die because everybody was going to move online, but what we notice is that actually mobile technology brings back people in the public spaces, and we use mobile technologies to organize our activities in our social life in the public spaces. So I think that it's really important that as a journal, but as broader academic community, we educate people about public space and what actually is a public space, because people tend to rely only on what they know, because clearly everybody knows just what they know. But if we show what a public space can be, we actually can have a more complex and articulated society.
I'm just checking on the hum. Is it going to be, that air conditioner?
Noise reduction.
Okay. Okay.
For the land.
Oh,
for the
yeah, unfortunately. So this week we're here at the World Urban Forum, and you mentioned earlier that this is an important moment for thinking about public space. A lot of people talking about it and thinking about it. What are your big takeaways from the week? What are the big experiences and challenges you see ahead?
Well, what I found really useful in this event, and I attended Quito in 2016, so this is my second UN Habitat event, is that you really meet people from different walk of lives in different contexts. So you meet with other academics, you meet with NGOs, activists, you meet with people with governments. So the most interesting thing is to see how people can really find space to share and communicate. So I think that that's the biggest value of this kind of events, which are not just for a segment of society, but they try to bring everybody together. What I notice is that, as I was expecting, a lot of time we work on assumptions. We think to know what is public space. We need to know what people need. But as a takeaway message from all the sessions that I attended was confirming also my personal idea that we need to listen, because often it's not only government that doesn't listen, but also as academics and researchers, we sometimes are stuck on our ideas. So it's really important always to go back to the community and ask them and listen to them. We had some really good sessions where people were sharing their experience of public spaces. And these were not academics, they were not activists, they was just common people who attended the World Urban Forum and wanted to have their voice heard. So for me it's really important that we've got these kind of experiences where people can come and share, and we are ready to listen to them. I think that another takeaway message would be the importance of never giving up, because I've seen some really amazing projects that were community driven and people that really put their life into this project. So this is something that probably we should advertise more and we should support more, the fact that communities often face challenges, but they might not be alone. Somewhere else in the world there might be somebody who had a similar experience. So that's why it's important to put people in contact so that we can learn from one each other.
Well, Mirko Guaralda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And cut. Although don't cut. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
One
Want
more
to do the
question.
hands? Oh, okay.
No, one more question. Just continue on. Why is public space important?
Okay. Well, tell me, why is public space important?
Well, when I was a student, one of the things that one of my lecturers told us was that the level of progress of a civilization can be read in its public spaces. And I've always been reflecting on this concept. And then when I started traveling, visiting different cities and learning different cultures, I could appreciate how that is actually true. Public space is the main stage where we represent ourselves, is where we meet other people, where we exchange at different level. Often people think of public spaces just as markets, but we exchange at a cultural, social, even political and personal level. So for me, public space is an important concept because that's the grounding of our culture and our society. Is our we represent ourselves, our we communicate to others who we are, how we understand the world, what are our aspirations. So for me it's really important to advocate public spaces because we are advocating for a community and a society to have room to represent themselves, to have room to meet other people, to have room to be human beings.